Every autumn, we torch piles of branches that could feed the earth for decades, destroying free water and fertilizer in a single afternoon. Yet in the Alps, one rebel farmer buried wood instead of burning it and grew lemons in the snow. This mounded soil became a 20-year powerhouse. No hoses, no fertilizer, no struggle. So why did we abandon the secret that could end drought in your own backyard? This video will show you why this method disappeared and how to bring it back step by step. The answer challenges everything modern agriculture believes. Sepp Holzer never set out to become a rebel. He simply watched the mountains and listened to the soil. In 1980s Austria, that quiet defiance turned his farm into a battleground. Inspectors arrived with clipboards and warnings, measuring his steep terraces and the deep ponds he had dug without permission. Each mound of buried wood drew another fine. His neighbors followed the rules. Flat fields, straight rows, government-approved crops. Holzer built hills out of rotting logs and planted citrus where only spruce had grown. Officials called it reckless. They worried about floods and erosion and handed him dozens of violation notices a year. By the end of the decade, he was known as the most fined farmer in Austria, a title he wore with a crooked smile. In 1986, after heavy rains, authorities accused him of building illegal water retention mounds. He paid the penalty, then appealed, arguing his ponds and terraces prevented the very disasters they feared. In 1989, the Agricultural Board threatened to seize his farm. Holzer's response was simple. He invited them to see his yields. Lemons, kiwis, grapes, and root vegetables flourished on slopes where nothing but grass had grown before, producing 10 times more food than any neighbor. By 1992, his methods spoke for themselves. Citrus trees bending under the weight of fruit, vegetables thriving without a single drop of irrigation or a bag of fertilizer. Every penalty became proof. Nature, left to its own wisdom, can outlast any bureaucracy. Picture the scene at Kramerhof. Lemons dangling in the alpine wind, their skins bright against a backdrop of snow. Kiwi vines climbing beside spruce trees. Grapes ripening on slopes where neighbors struggle to coax grass from the soil. No hoses snake through these beds. No sprinklers tick in the night. Water comes from within the earth itself, pulled up through roots, reaching deep into mounds of buried wood. The soil is dark and loose, laced with the sweet scent of decay. Frost settles in early October, but the ground beneath the citrus stays warm. Even in winter, green shoots push through the mulch, fed by the slow heat of rotting logs breaking down below. This is not greenhouse glass or hidden irrigation. The secret is buried underfoot. Each mound is packed with fallen logs, branches, and leaves layered like the forest floor, then capped with earth. Now here is where most people raise an eyebrow. How can buried wood hold enough water to skip irrigation for 20 years? Rotting wood is a sponge, not a metaphor but a physical fact. The cell walls of wood, made mostly of lignin, form a maze of tiny pores and tunnels. As wood decays, those pathways open wider, and rainwater and snowmelt flood every chamber. In laboratory tests, heavily decomposed pine logs absorbed water equal to 5 times their dry weight, over 500%. Oak, slower to break down, still doubles or triples its mass with moisture. Drive a moisture probe into a Hugelkultur bed in the dry heat of July, when neighboring gardens wilt and hoses run all night, and field readings show 40 to 60% soil moisture inside the mound, even as the top soil above cracks in the sun. As fungi and microbes eat the cell walls, the wood's density drops. Degraded pine falls to just 0.18 grams per cubic centimeter, less than half its original weight, and every gram of that decayed wood traps several grams of water. For gardeners, this means freedom from dragging hoses across the yard. Do the work once and the mound waters itself for decades. The water is only half the story. Beneath every mound, a quiet engine runs day and night. As microbes and fungi break down lignin and cellulose, their work is exothermic. Every bite of wood releases heat, warming the soil from the inside out. Even in an alpine winter, the ground above a buried log runs several degrees warmer than the air. Seeds germinate earlier in spring. Frost passes harmlessly over young shoots. The growing season stretches into autumn, with tomatoes and squash ripening weeks after neighboring gardens have withered. Over the years, the buried wood becomes a trust fund for the soil. Hardwoods like oak and maple take 20 years to fully decompose, releasing nitrogen, phosphorus, and calcium at a pace that matches the plant's needs. No boom and bust cycles, just a slow, reliable feeding. Even after a decade, the soil at the heart of a mound tests higher for nitrogen and phosphorus than the surrounding ground. Fungi weave through the log fibers, shuttling minerals to surface roots. Bacteria break complex compounds into simple food, and earthworms tunnel through the softening wood. An underground orchestra turning dead wood into living fertility. So if it works this well, why did it vanish? Flat fields became the new standard as machines rolled onto the land after 1920. Tractors and harvesters demanded a uniform surface. No bumps, no mounds, nothing to slow a steel wheel or jam a plow. The old practice of building hills from buried wood fell out of favor, not because it failed, but because it didn't fit the logic of machines. Fields were scraped level, brush was burned, and the land was reworked to suit steel, not roots. As the mounds disappeared, so did their hidden reservoirs of water and nutrients, leaving a blank surface easy for machines but hungry for fertilizer and irrigation. Most mainstream gardening advice still assumes flat beds, drip lines, and bags of amendments from the store. Hugelkultur challenges that assumption with evidence you can dig into with your own hands. And here is exactly how to build one yourself this weekend. Start with a trench dug right on top of the grass, roughly a foot deep. The foundation is always the biggest, oldest, most rotten logs you can find. Oak and maple work best, because hardwood breaks down slowly and feeds the soil for years. Never use cedar, walnut, or anything treated. Those woods poison roots and stall the mound. Stack the logs tightly, filling gaps with smaller branches and twigs, because every air pocket is a future sinkhole. Now comes the step most people skip, and it is the one that makes or breaks the bed. Pack every crevice with nitrogen-rich greens, grass clippings, fresh manure, even urine, because rotting wood is hungry for nitrogen. If you skip this step, microbes will steal nitrogen straight from your plants. That is the nitrogen trap, and it brings yellow leaves and stunted growth. Once the green layer is thick, cap the mound with about a foot of topsoil and mulch. Water it well during the first year, and after that, the mound handles the rest. Real people prove this every growing season. A retired school teacher reported her hose stayed coiled since the second spring. Her water bill dropped so sharply the city sent a notice asking if her meter was broken. A frugal suburban homeowner turned last year's brush pile into a winding serpentine bed and got his largest harvest ever using nothing but kitchen scraps and autumn leaves. A permaculture gardener watched her seedlings yellow because she skipped the manure, until she dug in fresh clippings and compost and the bed sprang to life within weeks, her mistake becoming her proof. Each story carries the same line: bury the wood and the ground gives back for years. As of 2023, more gardeners are turning to self-sustaining techniques as water scarcity and fertilizer prices climb. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency notes that rainwater harvesting alone can save up to 50% of the water typically used for gardens. Hugelkultur takes that idea underground, storing moisture not in a tank but in the bones of the soil itself. Millions still burn what could become reservoirs beneath their feet. Every buried branch is a quiet act of building something that outlasts a single season, a single drought, a single lifetime. The ground remembers what we give it. What legacy will your garden leave? Share your thoughts below. And if you want more forgotten methods for growing food without fighting the land, subscribe, and we will keep bringing them back to the light.